there again, everyone. What a surprise, you came back after my super long video of last week, which maybe you didn't even watch because it was pretty long. Before I go any further, I wanted to introduce you to a newcomer to the channel. I would like you all to meet my new mascot. My middle child has christened them Bruce. So this is Bruce the Chipmunk. I was thinking of just hiding them in a different spot every video and seeing if you could find him, but I'm kind of limited in places I can hide them, so I'm just going to tuck them over here. There we go. Okay, now to business. This week the video is another one of my continuing series on the #1 American bestseller of every year. Again, if you haven't seen these videos, I am going off of the publisher's weekly bestseller list. That is because I wanted to go as far back as I could, and it was the oldest I could find. It goes back to 1895. This week's video is the bestseller of 1902, so we're on the 7th one. We're just trucking right along here. So without further ado, I know you just can't wait to find out which one it was. The #1 American bestseller in the year 1902 was... ta-da! The Virginian by Owen Wister. The Virginian is a book you may have heard of because it's been, maybe not the book necessarily, but the story has been enduring in many ways, which I will go into in just a little bit here. First off, as usual, here's a bit about the author. Owen Wister was born in 1860 in Philadelphia. A note of interest, his mother Sarah was the daughter of famous British actress Fanny Kemble. I know I've heard of her, maybe some of you have too. He studied at several schools, including Harvard, where he wrote a successful play for the Hasty Pudding Theatricals Club, which helped them to build their theater. He thought he might study music at first and spent 2 years at a Paris conservatory, but then he veered into the law, graduating from law school in 1888. He was never able to really get interested in his legal career. His first book was The New Swiss Family Robinson, which was a parody of the popular title, published in 1882. His next book was The Dragon of Wantley, which was put out 10 years later. So none of you writers get discouraged if you can't find time to write, or it's just taking you forever to write that thing. 10 years, a 10-year stretch. I find that very heartening, personally. He, like friend Theodore Roosevelt and later Frederick Remington, was fascinated with the American West, and a trip to the Wyoming Territory in 1885 sparked his romantic imagination. After a few more of these trips out west, he gave up the law for good and concentrated on his writing. Lynn McLean, or McLean, About a Cowboy, was published in 1897. Now, although Wister wrote many novels and nonfiction works, he is best known today for The Virginian, published in 1902, in which Lynn McLean also featured as a supporting character. His other works include Lady Baltimore in 1906, which is also heavily romanticized and also criticized as it's a tale of a southern plantation. There was a biography of Ulysses S. Grant in 1901, and Roosevelt, The Story of a Friendship in 1930. He also wrote essays, poems, short stories, operas, and plays, including adaptations of McLean and The Virginian. In 1898, he married Mary Channing, whose nickname was Molly, which was the name of the lead female character in The Virginian. She died in childbirth in 1913. Wister himself stayed around until 1938, when he died at his home in Saunderstown, Rhode Island. Here are some more interesting bits of trivia. The University of Wyoming has an annual literature magazine named in his honor, the Owen Wister Review. The Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming also has Mount Wister. During his lifetime, he built a house in La Mesa, California, although he ended up not moving there since his wife died prematurely. There is a street in the neighborhood named Wister Drive, as well as Virginian Lane and Molly Woods Avenue, all of which were named by the man himself. Now, as to the novel, The Virginian. The novel is set at a more or less non-specific time, vaguely around the time when cowboys still populated the West more than any other white person. It is a highly romantic tale, setting the cowboy as a gentleman if one with his own definite code of honor. It is narrated by a never-named Easterner who is a stand-in for Wister. The Virginian of the title is likewise never named. He is a cowboy out in the vast country of Wyoming. He is shown to be an intelligent man of honor who knows how to deal with people so well that he is eventually elevated to foreman of the ranch where he works. He also develops an infatuation with the new schoolmarm who has arrived from Vermont, which blossoms into romance and eventual marriage for the two. During all this, he handles a rebellion in the ranks, Western-style justice for horse thieves, and cements a firm and lasting friendship with the narrator. The character is widely regarded as the basis for the prototypical American cowboy character, and the novel as the beginning of the American Western story, although this has been disputed. It also has the first instance of the standoff shootout trope, which makes for an interesting chapter because there's a lot of suspense leading up to it, but then the actual scene is over almost before you know it. Perhaps the author didn't want to go too much into depictions of violence. As said, Wister did adapt the book for the stage. The first performance run came as early as January 1904. It starred Dustin Farnham as the titular character. He reprised his role 10 years later for the first film adaptation. And as to the film adaptations, oh boy, this story has showed itself to be amazingly durable over the years. Film versions have been made in 1914, 1923, 1929, 1946, and 2014. Also, there was a TV film adaptation in the year 2000. A television series, which may be why the name is familiar to some of you, spawned in 1962 and ran for 10 seasons. There was even a one-off comic book adaptation in 1963. No personal commentary here, this is just what's in the book. There is some book commentary by the Cowboys about their position when it comes to religion, and I just plain found it amusing. Ain't that a fine description of bees a-workin'? The singing masons building roofs of gold puts him right before you in his poetry without being foolish. His holiness and his grace. Why could not hire me for either of those positions? How many religions are there? All over the earth? You can begin with ourselves. Right here at home I know there's Romanists and Episcopals. 2 kinds, I put in. At least 2 of Episcopals. That's 3. The Methodists and Baptists, and 3 Methodists. Well, you do the counting. I accordingly did it, feeling my revolving memory slip cogs all the way around. Anyhow, there are safely 15. 15. He held this fact a moment. And they don't worship a whole heap of different gods like the ancients did. Oh, no. It's just the same one. The same one. The Virginian folded his hands over the horn of his saddle and leaned forward upon them in contemplation of the wide, beautiful landscape. 1 God and 15 religions, was his reflection. That's a right smart of religions for just 1 God. This way of reducing it was, if obvious to him, so novel to me that my laugh evidently struck him as a louder and livelier comment than was required. He turned on me as if I had somehow perverted the spirit of his words. I ain't religious, I know that, but I ain't unreligious, and I know that too. Again, just another little bit about religion. Much like the last one, it's just very well stated as to the position of these men. I doubt if he knows a word of science, said I, musing about the doctor. Science? He doesn't know what Christianity is yet. I've entertained many guests, but none. The whole secret, broke off Judge Henry, lies in the way you treat people. As soon as you treat men as your brothers, they are ready to acknowledge you, if you deserve it, as their superior. That's the whole bottom of Christianity, and that's what our missionary will never know. This is just a quick little one-off line that I just loved. When a man ain't got no ideas of his own, said Scipio, he ought to be kinda careful who he borrows 'em from. And one more just really great quote. Forgive my asking you to use your mind. It is a thing which no novelist should expect of his reader. Really damn. So there we are, The Virginian by Owen Wister. I found that, like many of the books I've gone through so far, this book is still engaging and well written. It's a darn good yarn. There are parts that perhaps don't quite hold up so much, like the archetype of the cowboy. It's overly romantic, and you're like, I don't know if these guys were really such stand-up guys as they say. Humans being human. Some of them were and some of them weren't, I'm sure. And to be sure, even in the book there are villains and there are heroes and etc. But just not quite so many shades of gray as you might see nowadays. But the depictions of nature are predictably just gorgeous, sweeping. There's a real love for the environment. The hero is someone you want to root for. The heroine is also someone you want to root for. She is smart. She is engaging. She is capable in many ways, despite being very young and new to the area. She actually is cute because he is trying to woo her, and she is being standoffish. And one of the things she gets him to do is she gets him to read. Not that he can't read, he is a very good reader, but because he's interested in her, she's like, well, I'm interested in this book, so why don't you read it? So he winds up reading book after book, and then he brings them back, she gives him a new one, and they have something to discuss in the meantime. And in exchange, they go for rides, and he teaches her about the country, and so their romance blossoms. So yeah, a few dated parts, but overall a very good story, and I do recommend this one. I don't think there's been one yet that I haven't recommended, even with caveats, which is pretty cool, I think. It shows that a good book is a good book, no matter when it's written. So that's it for this week. I, and Bruce, wish you a good rest of your week. And I really, really hope that we live in very interesting times right now, but the fact is, no matter what, you never know for sure what's coming, so I always hope for the best. Take care of yourselves and each other, read lots of books, see lots of movies, and do what you need to do for you. And pet a chipmunk. Not a real one. That's not a good idea, but like get a pretend one and pet it. It's very soothing. See, the fake ones won't try and bite you. At least I don't think so. In any case, I will see you next week. Bye! Good time, boy. Now go lay down. Go lay down! Go lay down! Oh, that's a good boy. That's not a good boy.